So I thought it'd be really cool to have the fireplace behind me on. But I'm not going to be able to read and you see the fireplace, so sorry, but it's there with the big clock. So um, I'm going to dive right into where we left off. And if you'd like to say hello to Mittens, there's Mittens, Mr. Hostetter's kitten. Well, she's not a kitten, but she's very little. So say hi, Mittens. She wants to be left alone. So, okay. So they're now in the United States, and so Esperanza has a lot of learning to do. So let's see what happens. A tent? Last year we worked for another farm in El Centro in the Imperial Valley, not far from the border. We were there during the melons. We lived in a tent with a dirt floor and had to carry water. We cooked outside. But when we moved north to Arvin, that's where we're going now, a big company owns the camp. We pay $7 a month, and my papa says it is worth it to have piped in cold water and electricity and a kitchen inside. He says the farm is 6,000 acres. Isabel leaned towards Esperanza and grinned as if she were telling a big secret. And a school. Next week, I get to go to school, and I will learn to read. Can you read? Of course, said Esperanza. Will you go to school? Asked Isabel. I went to private school and started when I was 4, so I've already passed through level 8. When my grandmother comes, maybe I will go to high school. So she's smart, and she's. Remember, I told you guys, a lot of countries, it's a privilege to get to go to school, and you guys have that privilege. Esperanza had that privilege because she had money. So, if you don't have money, in a lot of countries, you go to work. So, I guess Esperanza just assumed everyone had the same luxury she did or didn't even think about it. But she also says, we pay $7 a month. And my dad said that's a good deal because we get in piped cold water and we get a kitchen. So if you don't pay that $7 a month, then it's probably less or free, I'm not sure. Then you don't have those luxuries. Well, wow, that's pretty steep. But so they're going to the same place that they had went the previous year. So let's see what happens. Well, when I go to school, I will learn English, said Isabel. Esperanza nodded and tried to smile back. Isabel was so happy, she thought, about such little things. The brown, barren mountains rose higher, and a red-tailed hawk seemed to follow them for miles. The truck rattled up a steep grade past sparse, dry canyons, and Esperanza's ears began to feel full and tight. How much longer? Kind of like when you're going up the mountain or to like Idlewild or Big Bear or somewhere. Your ears get a little plugged. That's what she's experiencing. I don't think she's ever experienced that before. Plus, you guys are kids in a car. How much longer? Like that. We will stop for lunch soon, said Isabel. They wove through the golden hills softly sculptured with rounded tops until Juan finally slowed the truck and turned down a side road. When they came to an area shaded by a single tree, they piled out of the truck, and Josefina spread a blanket on the ground, then unwrapped a bundle of burritos, avocados, and grapes. They sat in the shade and ate. Mama, Hortensia, and Josefina chatted and watched the babies, while Isabel lay down on the blanket between Alfonso and Juan. She was soon asleep. Esperanza wandered away from the group, grateful not to be rocking in the truck or a train. She walked to an overlook. Below, canyons plunged to an arroyo, a silver line of water, from an unknown river. It was quiet and peaceful here, the sweet silence broken only by the swish of the dried grasses from the wind. So she's getting some peace and quiet, so time to think. With her feet solid on the ground for the first time in many days, Esperanza remembered what Papa had taught her when she was little. If she lay on the land and was very still and quiet, she could hear the heartbeat of the valley. Can I hear it from here, Papa? She stretched out on her stomach and reached her arms to the side, hugging the earth. She let the stillness settle upon her and listened. She heard nothing. Be patient, she reminded herself, and the fruit will fall into your hand. She listened again, but the heartbeat was not there. She tried one more time, desperately wanting to hear it, but there was no reassuring thump repeating itself. No sound of the earth's heartbeat or Papa's. There was only the prickly sound of dry grass. Determined, Esperanza pressed her ear harder to the ground. I can't hear it. She pounded the earth. Let me hear it. Tears burst from her eyes as if someone had squeezed her over an overripe orange. Confusion and uncertainty spilled forth and became an arroyo of their own. I hope I'm saying that right. She rolled on her back, her tears warming down her face into her ears, seeing nothing but the vast sky in dizzying swirls of blue and white. She began to feel as if she were floating and drifting upward. She lifted higher, and part of her liked the sensation, but another part of her felt untethered and frightened. She tried to find the place in her heart where her life was anchored, but she couldn't. So she closed her eyes and pressed the palms of her hands against the earth, making sure it was there. She felt as if she were falling, careening through the hot air. Her skin perspired and she felt cold and nauseous. She took short breaths, heaving in and out. Suddenly the world went black. Someone hovered over her. She sat up quickly. How long had she been in the darkness? She held her pounding chest and looked up at Miguel. Anza, are you all right? Wonder if she passed out or fainted or something. She took a deep breath and brushed off her dress. Had she really floated above the earth? Had Miguel seen her? She knew her face was red and blotchy. I'm fine, she said quietly, wiping the tears from her face. Don't tell Mama. You know she worries. Miguel nodded. He sat down close to her without asking any questions. He took her hand and stayed with her, the quiet interrupted only by her occasional breaths. I miss him too, Miguel whispered, squeezing her hand. I miss the ranch and Mexico and Abuelita, everything. And I'm sorry about what Isabel said to you. I meant nothing by it. She stared at the dark brown and purple ridges staggering in the distance and let the ripe tears cascade down her cheeks, and this time Esperanza did not let go of Miguel's hand. They're comforting one another. She's all alone, or feels all alone, and he's telling her, I feel the same way. We're in this together. I miss everything you miss. They were headed down a steep grade on Highway 99 when Isabel said, Look! Esperanza leaned around the side of the truck as they rounded a curve. It appeared as if the mountains pulled away from each other, like a curtain opening on a stage, revealing the San Joaquin Valley beyond. Flat and spacious, it spread out like a blanket of patchwork fields. So they look like different colors of green or whatever. So it looks like a patchwork quilt. It's quite pretty, but very, very flat. Esperanza could see no end to the plots of yellow, brown, and shades of green. The road finally leveled out on the valley floor, and she gazed back at the mountains from where they'd come. They looked like monstrous lion's paws resting at the edge of the ridge. A big truck below, its horn and wand pulled over to let it pass. Its bed bulged with cantaloupes. Ah, there are the cantaloupes. Another truck and another did the same. A caravan of trucks passed them, all piled high with the round melons. So they pick them and pick them and pick them and pick them. They pick them all at once, and so they load up a truck, they load up another truck, and so forth. So when it's time to pick the cantaloupes, they pick them all, and so they load up all the trucks. So I bet you've seen that maybe with around here oranges or lemons or avocados or something, to where even potatoes. So you'll see a truck of potatoes and another truck and so forth. So on one side of the highway, acres of grapevine stretched out in soldiered rows, so they're very straight, and swallowed up the arbors. On the other side, fields and fields of dark green cotton plants became a sea of milk-white puffs. This was not a gently rolling landscape like Caliente's, for as far as the eye could travel, the land was unbroken by even a hillock, which must mean, I'm not sure what that is. I'm assuming maybe like a small hill. It's just flat. Esperanza felt dizzy looking at the repeated straight rows of grapes and had to turn her head away. They finally turned east off the main highway. The truck went slower now, and Esperanza could see workers in the fields. People waved, and Juan honked the truck horn in return. Then he pulled the truck to the side of the road and pointed to a field that had been cleared of its harvest. Sorry, it's having trouble seeing for some reason, maybe because it's a little darker in here. Dried, rambling vines covered the acre, and leftover melons dotted the ground. The field markers were down. "We can take as many as we can carry," he called back to them. Alfonso jumped out, tossed a dozen cantaloupes to Miguel, then stepped up on the running board and slapped the top of the truck for Juan to start again. The melons, warmed by the valley sun, rolled and somersaulted with each bump of the truck. Two girls walking along the road waved, and Juan stopped again. One of them climbed in, a girl about Miguel's age. Her hair was short, black, and curly, and her feathers were sharp and pointed. Feathers. It's Friday, and I've been in this house too long. Let me start over. Her hair was short, black, and curly, and her features were sharp and pointed. She leaned back against the side of the truck, her hands behind her head, and she studied Esperanza. Her eyes darted at Miguel whenever she could. "This is Marta," said Isabel. "She lives at another camp where they pick cotton, but it is owned by a different company. Her aunt and her uncle live at our camp, so she stays with them sometimes." So, by the way, the melons, because they were all picked, these might have been overripe melons or melons that they couldn't put in the truck, so they're just left. And so if anyone of workers or whoever can pick them up, they pick them up and take whatever they can carry. So, Miguel took 12 and put them in the truck, so enough for them to all have. So, they're ripe, they're ready to go, so they need to be eaten. Logically, they can't pick them all up. They're not going to eat, 100 melons, so he took what they needed. "Where are you from?" asked Marta. "Aguascalientes, El Rancho de las Rosas," said Esperanza. "I have never heard of El Rancho de las Rosas. Is that a town?" "It was the ranch they lived on," said Isabel proudly, her eyes round and shining. "Esperanza's father owned it, and thousands of acres of land. She had lots of servants and beautiful dresses, and she went to private school too. Miguel is my cousin, and he and his parents worked for them. So you're a princess who's come to be a peasant? Where's all your finery? Esperanza stared at her and said nothing. What's the matter, silver spoon stuck in your mouth? Her voice was smart and biting. A fire destroyed everything. She and her mother had to come to work like the rest of us, said Miguel. So this girl seems a little bitter. Oh, and being born with a silver spoon in your mouth means being born rich or wealthy or with money. And so, silver, to a princess to a peasant, kind of being kind of rude to her, snotty, which isn't very nice. Confused, Isabella added, Esperanza's nice. Her papa died. Well, my father died too, said Marta. Before he came to this country, he fought in the Mexican Revolution against people like her father, who owned all the land. Esperanza stared back at Marta, unblinking. What had she done to deserve this girl's insults? Through gritted teeth, she said, You know nothing of my papa. He was a good, kind man who gave much of his property to his servants. That might be so, said Marta, but there was plenty of rich who did not. That's not my papa's fault. Isabel pointed to one of the fields, trying to change the subject. Those people are Filipinos, she said. They live in their own camp. And see over there, she pointed to a field down the road. Those people are from Oklahoma. They live in Camp 8. There's a Japanese camp too. We all live separate and we're separate. They don't mix us. They don't want us banding together for higher wages or better housing, said Marta. The owners think of that Mexicans have no hot water, that we won't mind, so long as we think no one else has any. They don't want us talking to the Okies from Oklahoma or anyone else because we might discover that they have hot water. See? Do the Okies have hot water? Asked Miguel. Not yet. But if they get it, we will strike. Strike, said Miguel. You mean we will stop working? Don't you need your job? Of course I need my job. But if all the workers join together and refuse to work, we might all get better conditions. Remember in Bud Not Buddy where Lefty Lewis was talking about unions and striking and stuff? This is very similar. So I want to keep them separate and not band together so they don't realize that they aren't all getting the same equal treatment, that some might get better conditions than others. But if they all band together, maybe they'll all get hot water. They'll all get running water and, better conditions. Or they all get the same wages, so they're keeping them separate, which really. Are the conditions so bad? Asked Miguel. Some are decent. The place you are going to is one of the better ones. They even have fiestas. There's a jicama this Saturday night. I think that's what it says. Isabel turned to Esperanza. You will love the jicamas. We have them every Saturday night during the summer. There is music and food and dancing. This Saturday is the last for this year because soon it will be too cold. Esperanza nodded and tried to pay attention to Isabel. Marta and Miguel talked and grinned back and forth. An unfamiliar feeling was creeping up inside of Esperanza. She wanted to toss Marta out of the truck and scold Miguel for even talking to her. Haven't he seen her rudeness? She brooded as they rode past miles of young, tamarisk trees that seemed to be the border of someone's property. Beyond these trees is the Mexican camp, said Isabel, where we live. Marta smirked at Esperanza and said, just so you know, this isn't Mexico. No one will be waiting on you here. Then she gave her a phony smile and said, Intendas? Understand? Sorry, I know I said that wrong. Intendes? Understand? Esperanza stared back at her in silence. The one thing she did understand was that she did not like Marta. So, Marta's not very nice. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe Marta will come around. So, next chapter is Las Cabellos, Cobellas, onions. And you know I don't like onions, but maybe I'll show you how I make peppers and onions to where I cook them down because I don't like the texture. So maybe I can show you that with the onions. Let me see if the following chapter is peppers. That would be great, but probably not my luck. Ooh, that's a very long chapter. Next one's almonds. So we'll do something with onions. I'm not sure. I'll probably show you how I do onions of some sort. So I hope you guys are able to get on sites and be looking on the Hemet website or be picking up packets if you can. These are just reinforced packets. I'm not going to be grading them, but they're good to help you stay focused on what we've done and to keep you preparing for middle school. Go on the virtual websites, you know, the museums and whatnot, and learn some things and enjoy outside. Yesterday, for the first time and since I was a kid, I laid on my front grass and I looked at the clouds and took it all in and watched them move and looked at shapes, and it was fun. I got some fresh air and hung out outside and listened to birds and looked at nature's beauty. So sometimes you just have to do things that are things you don't normally do. So I will read to you guys on Monday. Stay safe.